Commissioner, welcome to New Europe Studios.
Welcome.
Just a few days ago, together with Vice President Mogherini, you launched a consultation on the European Neighbourhood policy. You said that this review will help us work more effectively to achieve these goals, and you said that you want to see a more equal partnership and one that brings results. Given the situation today, our neighborhood is much more complicated, much more complex than it was a few years ago, and mostly from what it was in the previous review, which was in 2010 or 2011. So how would you describe the present situation?
Basically, you have said everything, meaning that indeed our neighborhood is rather different, and that's why we have to shape our relationship to our individual neighbors differently depending on their political availabilities and possibilities. And we have some neighbors which have clearly a European perspective, others which don't, and it's about identifying, so to say, the common dominator between our neighborhood, our neighboring country, and us. We have clearly European interests. Our interests are peace, stability, prosperity, and this we would like to follow up with our neighbors, and depending on their interests, how deeply the relationship should be, we can structure, organize, and shape our cooperation. And that's why we need this tailor-made approach, and we need also ownership on the side of our partners. That's why we're talking about partnership.
But there is, let's say, the most prominent issue at this moment regarding our neighborhood, regarding eastern expansion, is the question of Ukraine. At this moment, everything seems to be hinged on the Minsk agreement. How do you think this situation is moving forward?
Well, now we are at the end of, or in the second half of March. We have just a couple of weeks a ceasefire. There are breaches, but in general, one could say it works out. I'm quite hopefully that the further implementation of the Minsk agreement is going on. It should be implemented at the latest by the end of the year, and I hope we can have a settlement of this conflict in order to concentrate ourselves on the further development, economic and societal development of Ukraine.
There's been a lot of talk about the long-run prospects of Ukraine, and there is talk about a Finlandization of Ukraine. Now, how would something like that influence, let's say, its relationship with the European Union?
Well, the Ukrainian people have expressed a clear European, so to say, perspective. All their demonstrations and campaigns at the Maidan and elsewhere in the country are clearly indicating their future perspective. The outcome of the elections for the president, but also for the Rada, the parliament, confirms this. And now we have to see how to develop it. But our understanding is always it should be not on the cost of anybody, and not in particular on the cost of the Ukrainian people. So our first aim is now to stabilize, together with the Ukraine authorities, government, parliament, and others, the situation in Ukraine, to fix the borders, and then to start really to recover the country.
Speaking about the European regions, the Assembly of European Regions has members all around Europe, including in countries like Ukraine, like Russia, or if we speak about the prospects of enlargement towards the Western Balkans, for example, there are also members in the Western Balkans. There are also members in Turkey, For example, the president of the assembly is from Turkey. So how do you think that the regions can help the process, let's say, of neighborhood?
An organization like the Assembly of European Regions is an undenounceable structure, because it is for regions the same like we have for countries the Council of Europe. It covers, as you rightly said, more regions, or includes regions from different parts of Europe. Those who are inside the European Union, those are outside or still outside, and therefore, first of all, it's an excellent opportunity and platform to have exchanges, to share experiences, but also to shape opinions concerning European Union, the whole process, and regions like local entities are best suited to address, so to say, the interests of people, because their representatives are close to them.
Your portfolio is a double-barreled one. You have the neighborhood policy, and at the same time you have the enlargement negotiations. Of course, President Juncker, from the beginning of this commission, said that there will be no enlargement during the term of this commission. Nevertheless, the process is advancing. So what is the state of, how would you describe the state of enlargement at this moment?
Indeed, this statement has created some irritations, but I would say it was overestimated, because it only described, so to say, the state of negotiations with our candidate countries. And for, so to say, technical reasons, it's more or less unlikely that we will have an enlargement during our mandate till the end of 2019. But this doesn't mean we have stopped negotiations. Quite the opposite. It's about the process. We have to move our candidate countries in their societal and economic development closer to the European Union. It's therefore not only to negotiate the transformation of the acquis communautaire into national legislation, but it's also to develop the country. In many of these countries, for instance, we face still problems in terms of rule of law, transparency, independence of judiciary, fight against corruption. So this cannot only done simply by adopting the necessary legislation. It's also about sustainable implementation and change. And this takes its time, and therefore it's justified to speak about a process, and it's very likely that it takes time.
Let's move to something which is very prominent at this moment in Europe. This is the financial crisis that we have with us for a few years now, and which is at the same time it's developing into a political crisis at the same time. How does this affect the way the European Union is viewed from our neighborhood, both from the countries that are looking forward to an accession in the long term, or to our neighbors that are interested in another kind of relationship? For example, it's a few days now that Iceland decided not to continue with this process towards the European Union.
Yeah, I would say Iceland is a particular case. They have a very special situation due to its geographical location. But in general, if you look into the neighborhood, there is a very strong interest and aspiration to have closer relationship with the Union. Why? Because the European Union, although we have only 7% of the world population, it's by far the biggest market and the strongest economy, and therefore, if you look into the trade figures or the figures of foreign investments of our neighbors, it's always that the European Union is number one in both cases, and therefore the focus is always towards Europe, and there is a strong interest to deepen this relationship in order to explore and to exploit more the market opportunities of Europe, also from the side of our neighbors. And clearly for us as European Union, for our business community, these are interesting markets per se, because these are still markets to be developed.
I think yesterday or day before yesterday, you were in Armenia.
Indeed.
There is, as you know, a very long-running conflict about Nagorno-Karabakh. Does the European Union, do you in particular, view any role for the European Union in such regional conflicts?
There is an ongoing format, 5+2 in this particular case, trying to settle this conflict, and we should be trustful in this process. Also, one could see there are always backlashes, but I think primarily it is something where the two involved countries have to find a solution, and they should respect also agreements which have already been taken 2 decades ago.
Commissioner, thank you very, very much for being with us today. Thank you for being with us at New Euro Studios with Commissioner Johannes Hahn.